Welcome. I'm Luciano Potena, and I'm ESOT president, and it's my pleasure to be here today with Professor Stephan Ensminger, who is professor of cardiac surgery at the University of Lübeck in Germany, and he is also a member of the ECTA, which is the cardiothoracic section of ESOT. Stephan, we are here today to talk about the xenotransplantation clinical case, first in human case. So I think that we were all surprised, at least from this side of the ocean, to learn from the media and from the lay press that this really happened. So what was your reaction as a cardiac surgeon and professional involved in transplantation for so many years?
Yeah, Luciano, first of all, thank you for having me, especially for that really interesting conversation. And frankly, I completely agree. I was very surprised and impressed for several reasons, because actually xenotransplantation was not really the main focus of the scientific conferences covering transplantation throughout the recent years. And I always found it rather a niche subject, and it was covered by a few expert groups worldwide. And recent progress, I thought, was rather focusing on tissue engineering or preventing chronic rejection. And then I think in contrast to mechanical circulatory support, medical therapy has really had a renaissance. And they had several really interesting substances with whatever sacubitril, valsartan, or SGLT2 inhibition. So it came really to a surprise. So in summary, surprised, fascinated, but in my opinion, there are still a few questions open. For example, they have basically modified 10 genes on the heart of the pig that was used as a donor. And it's to what I read, it's not really clear if all the modifications are needed. And for example, they used CD47, this is the human anti-inflammatory gene, and that improved outcomes in bone marrow transplants. That's basically in pig to baboons published. But when you look at kidneys with that modification, they were more prone to inflammation and swelling. So this is just an example to point out of some aspects that may deserve further investigation. But in general, fascinated and really watching carefully how the patient is doing.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and this is it's interesting because of course it's a first in human, and there are a lot of as you said, a lot of questions open. But looking at this side of the ocean, we know that one of the strongest group working on xenotransplantation is in Germany, and they are working specifically on heart. So to your knowledge, how far are we in Europe for having something similar? So are we going with more care? Are we more carefully in going into the clinical practice? So this was not done in Europe because of this, or what is your feeling? Or are we following a different strategy to achieve the same goal? What is do you know anything about that?
Thank you, Luciano. This is really, really good questions, and I think I would imagine we're closer than we are, because some of the technology used for modifying the pig's genome was also developed here, and especially is established at the University of Munich. I think this is the strong group you mentioned, and they actually have in a German research foundation funded transregional collaborative research center, and it's called Biology of Xenogenic Cell, Tissue and Organ Transplantation, and they coordinate this. And they also have in Munich, to my knowledge, multi-modified, genetically modified pigs. And this is the subject of this actually grant to overcome xenoreaction and physical incompatibilities. And the main focus of this group is currently pig to primate xenografts. And if you look at the literature, they have recently published very encouraging results regarding heart transplant survival in these models. And so the treatment strategies regarding immunosuppression that they've used in Maryland, it's the anti-CD40 treatment, and this is also established here. And so I think, in summary, technically for a suitable patient with appropriate authorization from the German BfArM, for example, or I don't know how in Italy you call that authority, the procedure could also be performed here in Europe. And I know from what you read from the pioneering group in Maryland that the next step is a multi-center study they are planning. And I think this is really our main, or should be our main goal now, that several European sites who have the knowledge take part and establish that technology over here.
And regarding the technology, while you were talking, it came to my mind relevant questions that may have ethical fallout. So from what I've heard, the genetically modified pig that they used is basically done with a technology that is owned by a company. So there is a private company that patented and developed some of the genetic modification that were needed for this pig. So to a certain extent, I was thinking like if we have a device company that is not developing a new vat, but it's developing an engineered animal, and they just are selling that as if with the same way that we are selling a device. So this is just a very personal question, if you wish. So because in transplantation with human donors, we are not used, so it's a gift. Then we have the device that, of course, you have to buy the device. And here it's a situation that feels that is in between, because on one hand, you need the company that developed the pig, but that it's a biological, so it's still an animal. So how do you see this? So do you see this going into more, let's say, going into the pharma industry development, or going more on the, let's say, public domain owned technology? So
difficult question, Luciano. Really difficult. I mean, the company is called Revicor, who has actually produced that pig, and so basically, yeah, you're buying a genetically modified, animal. I think this is what it actually is, and the ethical question is now. I mean, I have the feeling you want to touch on the entire ethical issues with not receiving organs as a gift, but buying organs. Yeah. Okay. This would be here cross species. Yeah, and it's a pig. It's not a human. But I think that is very difficult for me to answer now in a few minutes, and I think it has to be cleared. I mean, if you regard this genetically modified pig as a kind of biological, like a biological antibody, for example, that's also a biological treatment. Or if you say, okay, it's not a human being, but it's an animal, and we have to discuss how, first of all, the entire knowledge about the genetic modification is, can this be patented worldwide, or does the public has a right to have this, because it's a human good that can cure a lot of disease, and we both know how long waiting lists are. Or if the society has to be ready or prepared to pay a lot of money for this and accept it, that it's a technology that has cost a lot of money, and is patented, and so you have to pay for it. And then the other distinctions surely is how you see it ethically, if you're allowed to do this, I think. But that's, I think, beyond the scope of our, and I think it's difficult and it needs a lot of reflection.
Yeah, no. I mean, of course, it's not something that we can tackle in these few minutes, but I think that is important beyond the excitement of the advancement of this technology and this therapy, to think also at the, let's say, at the drawbacks and also the other things that are needed to be considered. And as you said very appropriately, the patent beyond, and how far the let's say the rights of a private company in owning the technology for genetic modification needs has to be shared publicly or not? So this is also another big question.
Yeah, because to my knowledge, Luciano, but correct me when I'm wrong, was that it was not allowed that whatever part of the human genome is patented by a company. I think that is current legislation. So I think you just would have to, you basically would have to have a vote how it should work with genetically modified pigs or other animals, obviously.
So to conclude, my last question is bringing us back to the activities of the society and of ECTA. So how do you see this advancement influencing the planning of educational activities for ESOT and for ECTA in particular? So now, do you think that you said it at the beginning of our conversation, in the congresses and meetings, xenotransplantation was a really niche area, nobody was really talking about it. But now, do you think that this is opening also new educational need that we as a society should engage in specific activities going towards this topic?
I definitely, yes. And I think, in fact, in probably the cardiac surgery community, it's a kind of feeling like when the first human heart transplant was performed back by Christian Bernard. But unfortunately, we have nowadays more political issues worldwide that kind of, prevented that it's been really even more in the public. I mean, it was short time, but you don't hear a lot now. So, but I think it's a groundbreaking therapy that they did. And I think we should, especially from ECTA and ESOT, we should take this as a chance to focus more on xenotransplantation, take it out of the niche. It has been for quite a few years. And I think ECTA, ESOT could play an important role in facilitating the scientific exchange. And you could put focus on important aspects of xenotransplantation, organizing focused meetings and provide a platform, scientific exchange. And I think this would also help to create new collaborations. I mean, that we need, because it's a complicated technology. And as I said, a lot of questions open. And finally, I think, as I said, it's a groundbreaking therapy. And we have to recruit young people and engage young people and motivate young, talented scientists to get into the field of transplantation, because there are lots of other interesting subjects out there. But this I see in a way similar to back in 1967. Yeah, so it's a groundbreaking thing, and this is always a huge motivation for young people in a medical school or younger assistant doctors, junior doctors who are really interested in science, and we should take this as a chance to motivate them and get them into transplantation and see that it's really progressing in a very interesting way.
Thank you very much, Stephan. And
pleasure. Thank you for having me.